On May 15, 2026, something happened that no one in the music industry had seen in years. At midnight, while most of the world slept, a man pressed a button and released not one album, but three, simultaneously, without warning, without a traditional press cycle, without a single interview. Iceman, Habibti, Maid of Honor, 43 songs. One night. And within 24 hours, Drake had become Spotify's most streamed artist in a single day in 2026. And Iceman became the platform's most streamed album in a single day of the entire year. But here is what nobody is talking about. While the world was debating track lists and lyrical jabs, something else was happening quietly behind the curtain. Every stream, every sale, every sold-out arena date that follows this release adds to a financial empire that most people will never fully understand. Drake's net worth in 2026 stands at an estimated $400 million, built on music, yes, but also on a $400 million record deal, a $100 million annual gambling endorsement, a $100 million Toronto palace, and a business empire that generates money while he sleeps. And behind all of it, beyond the gold records, the private jets, the rap feuds, and the record-breaking albums, there is a son named Adonis, a family that was kept secret, then exposed, then finally embraced in public, and a mother who raised him in poverty while he became one of the richest entertainers alive. This is the full story of Drake's empire in 2026. And it is far more complicated and far more extraordinary than any headline has ever told you. Aubrey Drake Graham was born on October 24, 1986 in Toronto, Canada. And from the very first years of his life, contradiction was his closest companion. His father, Dennis Graham, was a drummer who had toured with Jerry Lee Lewis, a man with genuine musical talent, but an unstable presence at home. His mother, Sandy Scher, was an English teacher and florist who poured everything she had into raising her son. When Aubrey was just 5 years old, his parents divorced. Dennis moved to Memphis, and just like that, the boy who would one day rap about loyalty was left learning what abandonment felt like before he ever learned to shave. What followed was a childhood split between two worlds that could not have been more different. During the school year, Drake lived with his mother in Toronto's Forest Hill neighborhood, an affluent suburb where the other kids had money, connections, and stability. Drake had none of those things. His mother's health began to deteriorate, leaving her unable to work consistently. The bills mounted. The pressure mounted. And a young Aubrey Graham learned very early that the distance between appearing fine and actually being fine could be measured in dollars they did not have. During summers, he traveled to Memphis to visit his father, a man he would later describe in interviews and in his music as absent in every way that mattered. Those visits left wounds that never fully closed, wounds that would surface decades later in lyrics heard by hundreds of millions of people around the world. But something unexpected happened in the middle of all that instability. At 15, Drake landed a role on Degrassi, The Next Generation, a Canadian teen drama that aired across North America. He played Jimmy Brooks, a high school basketball star who gets shot by a classmate and ends up in a wheelchair. It was a dramatic, demanding role for a teenager with no formal acting training, and it paid roughly $40,000 to $50,000 per year. That money was not a luxury. It was a lifeline. With his mother sick and unable to provide consistently, Drake's acting income became the household's primary financial support. He was a teenager carrying the weight of an adult's responsibilities, showing up to a television set while most of his peers were worrying about homework. But even as the cameras rolled, his mind was somewhere else entirely. In his bedroom, between takes, during every spare hour he could find, Drake was writing. He was recording. He was building something that no one around him could fully see yet. He was becoming the artist who would one day change everything. In 2006, while still filming Degrassi, Drake released his first mixtape. It was called Room for Improvement. Nobody outside of Toronto paid much attention. He released a second one the following year. Still, the mainstream ignored him. Then came 2009, and everything changed. So Far Gone was not supposed to be a cultural earthquake. It was a free mixtape, released online, built in bedrooms and small studios by a kid from Canada who had no major label backing and no industry co-sign. But the moment people pressed play on the lead single, Best I Ever Had, something clicked. The song was vulnerable. It was melodic. It blended rap and R&B in a way that felt genuinely new, at a time when hip-hop was still largely defined by toughness and aggression. Lil Wayne heard it, and Lil Wayne called. Drake signed to Young Money Entertainment and began one of the most meteoric ascents in modern music history. His debut studio album, Thank Me Later, dropped in 2010 and debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. It was the beginning of a streak that would become almost impossible to comprehend. Album after album entered the charts at the top. Take Care in 2011. Nothing was the same in 2013. Views in 2016. Scorpion in 2018. Certified Lover Boy in 2021. For All the Dogs in 2023. 14 #1 albums. A figure that tied him with Jay-Z and Taylor Swift for the most in history. But Drake was never content to be just a recording artist. Even as the albums stacked up, he was building something larger and more durable than any single record could ever be. In 2012, he formalized OVO Sound, October's very own, transforming what had started as a personal brand into a full record label, a clothing line, and an annual music festival in Toronto that draws tens of thousands of fans every summer. OVO became more than a logo. It became a cultural identity, worn by fans in Toronto, London, Los Angeles, and Lagos. Then came the business moves that most fans never discuss. In 2022, Universal Music Group re-signed Drake to a long-term worldwide partnership covering recorded music, publishing, film, television, and brands. The estimated value of that deal, somewhere between $360 million and $400 million. Drake himself appeared to reference it in a lyric, rapping about signing a deal that came with $360 up front. That same year, he signed an endorsement deal with Stake.com, a crypto-based gambling platform reportedly worth $100 million per year. One deal, $100 million, annually. By the time Iceman dropped on May 15, 2026, Drake had not simply built a music career. He had constructed an engine, one that generates wealth across streaming, touring, fashion, licensing, and brand partnerships, all at the same time. The climb was never just about the music. It was always about the empire. There is a moment in every public figure's life when the carefully constructed wall between their private world and their public image collapses without warning. For Drake, that moment came in 2018, and it did not come on his terms. The story begins in October 2017, when a French model, artist, and former adult film actress named Sophie Brousseau gave birth to a baby boy in Toronto. His name was Adonis Graham. His father was one of the most famous men on the planet, and for months, almost no one knew. Drake said nothing publicly. He did not announce the birth. He did not post a photograph. He did not acknowledge the child's existence in any interview or on any platform. The silence was deliberate and total. What broke it was not a change of heart. It was a rival. In May 2018, rapper Pusha T, a longtime adversary of Drake, released a diss track that exposed Adonis's existence to the entire world. The revelation landed like a grenade. Overnight, the conversation shifted from music to morality. Why had Drake hidden his son? What did it say about the man behind the music? The internet erupted. The headlines were merciless. Drake responded the only way he truly knew how. He went into the studio. On his 2018 album Scorpion, he addressed fatherhood directly and without deflection. He confirmed Adonis. He explained that he had wanted to introduce his son to the world on his own terms, in his own time, before outside forces made that choice for him. The songs were raw and unguarded in a way that surprised even his harshest critics. And then something shifted. Rather than retreating from the subject, Drake began to open up. Photographs of Adonis appeared on his Instagram. A blond, blue-eyed boy with his father's smile and his mother's features. Drake brought him to basketball games. He held him on stage at the Billboard Music Awards in 2021, accepting the Artist of the Decade honor with his son in his arms, in front of millions of viewers. The boy who had been a secret became the centerpiece of Drake's most human public moments. As of 2026, Adonis Graham is 8 years old. Drake and Sophie Brousseau have never been romantically involved in any formal or lasting sense. But by all public accounts, their co-parenting relationship has stabilized into something functional and genuinely warm. Sophie has spoken about Drake as a present and devoted father. Drake has spoken about Adonis as the clearest and most grounding thing in his life. Drake has never married. He has no other publicly confirmed children. But Adonis changed him in ways that no album contract, no Spotify record, and no Billboard chart position ever could. Some things cannot be measured in dollars. $400 million is a number that is almost impossible to visualize. So, let us try. Start in Toronto, in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, Bridle Path, a tree-lined enclave where old Canadian money has lived for generations. Stands a structure that looks less like a private residence and more like a national monument. Drake calls it the Embassy. Designed by celebrated Canadian architect Ferris Raffauli, the Embassy spans 50,000 square feet of handcrafted limestone, soaring ceilings, and custom interiors that took years to complete. Inside, there is a full NBA-sized basketball court lined in marble. A recording studio built specifically to Drake's specifications. A grand chandelier that belongs in a concert hall rather than a living room. A 4,000-pound black marble bathtub. A Murakami-designed concert grand piano. A 2-story trophy room that holds the physical evidence of 2 decades of commercial dominance. The property is valued at approximately $100 million. It is not just a home. It is a statement, a monument to what Toronto can produce when it is given enough time and enough hunger. But the Embassy is only the beginning. In 2022, Drake added a Beverly Hills estate valued between $70 and $75 million, a sweeping California retreat with panoramic views of Los Angeles, resort-style grounds, and the kind of privacy that only serious money can buy. Beyond that sits a 313-acre resort-style ranch in Texas, a property that operates on a scale more consistent with a small kingdom than a personal retreat. His private jet, a customized Boeing 767 nicknamed Air Drake, has become almost as famous as the man himself. A flying mansion that carries him between continents with the same ease that most people commute to work. Then there is the business infrastructure behind all of it. OVO Sound continues to generate revenue through artist development, licensing, and the annual OVO Fest in Toronto. Virginia Black, his bourbon-based whiskey brand, sold 4,000 bottles in its first week alone and has continued expanding its distribution since launch. His Stake.com gambling endorsement, reportedly worth $100 million per year, operates independently of his music entirely. His Apple Music deal brought in $19 million at signing. Endorsements with Sprite, Nike, Burger King, and State Farm have added tens of millions more across his career. And underneath all of it sits the Universal Music Group deal. Somewhere between $360 million and $400 million, covering recorded music, publishing, film, television, and brand rights worldwide. It is the kind of deal that generates passive income across every format, every platform, and every territory on Earth, simultaneously. Drake has earned well over $600 million before taxes across his career. In peak years, he has made $95 million in a single 12-month period. $400 million, then, is not just a number. It is the result of 2 decades of relentless output, surgical business decisions, and an almost inhuman ability to stay relevant in an industry that devours its own. It is what the bottom looks like after you have spent long enough at the top. By the end of 2024, there were genuine questions being asked about Drake's place in hip-hop. The feud with Kendrick Lamar had played out across diss tracks, social media, and front pages worldwide. Kendrick's Not Like Us had become a cultural phenomenon. Critics were sharpening their pens. Some were writing what felt like early obituaries for Drake's cultural relevance, premature conclusions about a man who had been counted out before and had always found a way to answer. Drake said nothing. He went to work. The rollout for Iceman was unlike anything the music industry had seen in years. It began in July 2025 with a live stream simply titled Iceman, Episode 1. Drake on screen, hacking through blocks of ice, previewing new music without context or explanation. No press release, no interview, no apology tour, just the work. Over the following months, 3 more live stream episodes followed. Singles emerged. Anticipation built slowly, deliberately, like pressure accumulating behind a sealed door. Then, in late April 2026, Drake's team erected a massive structure of ice blocks in downtown Toronto. Fans gathered. Streamers arrived with cameras. For days, people chipped away at the installation searching for something hidden inside. When streamer Kishka finally cracked through to the center, he found a concealed bag containing a booklet with a single piece of information. A release date, May 15th, 2026. Drake's team reportedly handed the streamer $50,000 on the spot. The internet exploded before a single note of new music had been heard. And then, midnight arrived. Not one album dropped. 3 did. Iceman, 18 tracks. The Flagship, Habibti, 11 tracks. Maid of Honor, 14 tracks. 43 songs released simultaneously, featuring Future, 21 Savage, Central C, Sexy Y Red, Popcaan, and Party Next Door, among others. Within 24 hours, Iceman became Spotify's most streamed album in a single day in 2026. Drake became the platform's most streamed artist in a single day of the entire year, surpassing even the record previously held by BTS's Arirang, which had dominated those charts just months earlier. The scale of the commercial impact was immediate and undeniable, but beyond the numbers, something else was happening. Iceman arrived as a statement, not just a collection of songs, but a deliberate act of reassertion. The album's title was not accidental: cold, composed, unmoved by the noise around him. The rollout, the simultaneous triple drop, the record-breaking streams. Every element communicated the same message. He had not retreated. He had been building. For an artist who had spent portions of 2024 and 2025 absorbing criticism and absorbing losses in the court of public opinion, Iceman was not just a comeback album. It was a reminder, delivered at full volume, across 43 tracks and 3 simultaneous releases, that Drake had helped define what modern music sounds like. And he was not finished yet. There is a photograph that Drake posted in 2021 that tells you everything you need to know about where this story ends up. He is standing on the Billboard Music Awards stage, accepting the Artist of the Decade honor, an award that acknowledges 10 years of commercial dominance so complete it had no real precedent in modern music. The arena is full. The applause is deafening. And in his arms, pressed against his chest in a crisp white suit, is a small blond boy looking out at the crowd with wide, curious eyes. Adonis Graham, 8 years old in 2026. The son who was hidden, then exposed, then embraced. Publicly, permanently, and without apology. That image. The man who started from the bottom holding the child who will never have to, is the truest summary of what Drake has built. Because the $400 million is real. The Embassy is real. The 3 simultaneous albums and the Spotify records and the Universal deal and the $100 million endorsement are all real. But none of it exists in isolation. Every dollar traces back to a sick mother in Forest Hill, who could not always pay the bills, to a father in Memphis who was not there when he was needed, to a teenager who showed up to a television set every morning because the alternative was financial collapse. Drake did not become wealthy despite that beginning. He became wealthy because of what that beginning built inside him. A hunger so deep and so consistent that 2 decades of success have never fully satisfied it. In 2026, he is 39 years old. He has released 9 solo studio albums, broken more Billboard records than almost any artist in history, built a global brand from a personal motto, and raised a son in the public eye after the most painful kind of forced transparency. He has never married. He has 1 child. He has 1 city he will always call home, even when he is sleeping in Beverly Hills or flying over the Atlantic in a customized Boeing 767. That city is Toronto. And Toronto, in ways both symbolic and financial, lives inside every decision he has ever made. The boy from Forest Hill, who rapped about starting from the bottom, did not just escape poverty. He built a monument to the distance he had traveled. 50,000 square feet of limestone and marble, sitting in the most expensive neighborhood in Canada. Visible proof that the journey was real. And somewhere inside the Embassy, a boy named Adonis is growing up inside that monument, learning, without knowing it yet, what his father had to become so that he would never have to start from anywhere near the bottom.